two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome to hour number 3, our third and final live right here on this Tuesday morning on the Early Line on SportsGrid. He is Joe Ranieri. I am Ben Stevens. A lot to dive into here in hour number 3. We will continue to handicap the hardwood. A lot of action in the NBA on this Tuesday evening. Some college basketball breakdowns as well. Jon Rothstein joins the show later on in this third hour, I should say, to end out the show. And, of course, the countdown to Super Bowl 59, now just 5 days away. Joe, a lot to get to here in our third and final hour on the Early Line.
I'm looking forward to it here, Ben. I love the college basketball slate here tonight, and I think there are some fadeable spots in the association tonight with some big-name teams.
I like that. I do like that indeed. But, Joe, as we've been going up and down the checklist over the last 2 days or so in the lead up to Super Bowl 59, we've been comparing coaches, quarterbacks, skill position players, defense, all that will go into deciding the outcome and who hoists that Lombardi trophy high in the New Orleans sky on Sunday night. So we wanted to hear from the people as well. Which unit on what side of the football do you trust most for the biggest game of each and every NFL season? We do that now and Fade the Public. Which unit do you trust most for Super Bowl 59? We did talk some kicking props, some punt props, and, of course, the special teams markets earlier on in this show back in hour number 2. But we removed the third phase from this conversation. Is it KC's offense or defense, or do you look to the other side? Would it be Philly's offense or the Eagles' defense? And what's interesting, Joe, despite the perceived hate for Kansas City, or maybe the lack of trust in Kansas City all year long, not being overwhelmingly impressive despite reaching a third consecutive Super Bowl, both of the Chiefs units have more votes in our Fade the Public poll than that on Philadelphia's side. The Chiefs offense barely winning the day, 30.1%. The Chiefs defense at 29%. Which way did you vote, Ranieri, in this Fade the Public poll?
Yeah, I kind of a little shocked there, and I get it with the public and the Chiefs' love. I mean, how do you not trust Patrick Mahomes and the offense and Andy Reid and company? And heck, I can even understand the Spags, love here. And what else is the guy to do except, win every big game thanks to his defense that is underrated? But to me, I voted it's the number one defense in the NFL. It's not even close, guys. It's the Eagles. It's the Eagles defense, I think, giving up 17, points a game there. And you had mentioned it earlier, 10 turnovers in the playoffs here alone. If there is any unit on the field here on both sides that I trust, it's the Eagles defense to show up and show out and possibly win a Super Bowl, Ben, because of the defense.
Completely agree, Joe. If I was going to vote and I did vote in the Fade the Public poll. But if I was going to choose between a couple of options well before the other, I would look defensively first. I voted for the Chiefs defense, but I think the Eagles defense certainly has a case, probably the best case, as they have been the best defense all year long around the National Football League. But the reason I start on the defensive side, and it's not to disparage the talent that both teams have offensively, and of course some of the biggest stars in this sport. I think the main argument for the reason that both of these teams are here on this stage in the Big Easy, in the biggest football game of every season, is because of their defenses. And the reason, Joe, I've looked at the KC side of things and focused primarily on the Chiefs in my vote in the Fade the Public poll, I really am starting to enjoy this narrative that it's all about the refs, right? And Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, and that's why they are here. Chris Jones, following yet another AFC Championship win for Kansas City 2 Sunday nights ago, met with the media and was asked about this dynastic and historic run for KC. 5th Super Bowl in the last 6 years, 7 consecutive AFC Championship game appearances, which times up perfectly with when Patrick Mahomes became the starting quarterback. But you know what also times up with those 5 Super Bowl berths in the last 6 years and the first Lombardi Trophy that Kansas City won in this dynastic era? That would be Steve Spagnuolo becoming the defensive coordinator in KC. Took over the reins on the defensive side of the football as the DC in KC in 2019. They won a Lombardi Trophy that year with a victory over the 49ers. Steve Spagnuolo has been here for every run to a Super Bowl and every Super Bowl ring that the Chiefs have had in the last half decade. I trust KC's defense entering this game. Now, it's going to be a very difficult test to contain Saquon Barkley and what Jalen Hurts can do if he is truly near 100%. And, of course, you have Patrick Mahomes and you have Travis Kelce on the other side. And Philly's defense under Vic Fangio has been the best all season long. But the reliable thing for me, year over year, especially in the last 3 seasons for Kansas City, that defense. And that's what I'm trusting most entering Sunday.
Yeah, well, I think we both agree that the 2 best units on the field are going to be the defense. Both defenses, I think, are the keys to winning this, just simply because both offenses aren't necessarily built for these crazy, this isn't the greatest show on turf offenses here. We're talking about 2 teams that are here because they can run the ball, or at least the Eagles are here because they can run the ball and because their defense will lock you down. The Chiefs, they have the big name in Mahomes, but they're only here and winning what, Ben? A record, 13, 14, some obnoxious number of one-score games that they've rattled off?
Correct.
Yes, that's nice, but you only win those close one-score games if your defense is something you can rely upon. So I think both defenses have shown their ability to be relied upon when both offenses at times have been unreliable this year.
Yeah, absolutely so. The Chiefs have not been overwhelmingly impressive on the offensive side of the ball, yet some way they do just enough. The Chiefs have scored 30-plus points only 3 times this year, including their season high in terms of scoring production in their most important game to date. That would be the AFC Championship victory over Buffalo. But it's been that Chiefs defense. And, Joe, if you look at the offensive scoring numbers for Kansas City the last 2 years, they have not been great. Middle of the pack. In the first 5 years that Kansas City made it to an AFC Championship game and contended for Lombardi trophies season after season, they were at least a top 6 scoring offense every year, putting up better than 28.5 points per game. The last 2 years, around 23 points per game. And as you saw there, this season, just 22.6 points per game. Truly in the middle of 32 NFL organizations. Now, the Eagles, I think, have a little bit more offensive firepower, you would believe, in terms of their skill position players, and namely with maybe the biggest individual positional group matchup advantage in this game, that being Saquon Barkley at the running back spot. And, Joe, I think it's really well said by you in our discussion of this game yesterday, that if the Eagles want to have success and leave little doubt, you blitz Kansas City early and often. I'm not saying blitz Patrick Mahomes. You score and you take an early lead. Now, we have seen Kansas City rally from multiple double-digit deficits in their last 2 Super Bowls, down by 10 at the break against Philly, down by 10 early in the opening half last year against San Francisco. But you still don't want to allow this game to even be in one-score territory where KC has won 17 in a row.
Yeah, you can't. You have to make it so they can't come back. And ironically enough, Ben, I think it's kind of what they learned 2 years ago, isn't it? And it feels like that's why they spent so much time building up the defense in Philadelphia here for this moment to make sure they can't come back.
Trying to exact some revenge 2 years later. We'll talk that MVP market next. Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one? Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
We continue to get you ready for Super Bowl 59. The countdown and the tracker now just 5 days away for the biggest game of each and every football season. Sunday evening, around a 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time kick inside the Caesars Superdome in New Orleans between Kansas City and Philadelphia. Let's talk that MVP market and dive through the numbers where they currently stand. Again, the Chiefs are just a minus 120 money line favorite, but still, Kansas City expected, even ever so slightly, Joe, to win their 3rd consecutive Lombardi trophy. If that happens, more than likely Patrick Mahomes wins his 4th Super Bowl MVP award in his career. Saquon Barkley, a shorter price than that of his quarterback at plus 280. Jalen Hurts, a plus 350 number, and a large drop-off to Travis Kelce. Joe, we can talk value in just a moment, but let's start with the top of the odds board and those 3 prices. Mahomes for KC, Barkley and Hurts for Philadelphia. I ask you a 2-part question. If Kansas City wins Super Bowl 59, does Patrick Mahomes win the Super Bowl MVP award? If Philadelphia wins Super Bowl 59, who do you think has the edge in terms of MVP consideration, Saquon or Jalen?
Yeah, I think both are correlated, right? I think it goes without saying. Mahomes, if Kansas City is going to be successful with the lack of the running game, it's going to be based upon Patrick Mahomes throwing the ball, which puts him in the driver's seat for the MVP, right? However, it's Philadelphia where the value lies, because while this is most often a quarterback award, Ben, we all know this. And listen, Jalen Hurts, there was an argument to be made a couple of years ago where he might have been the most valuable player in a losing effort there against Kansas City. He was that good, but we have not seen that version of Jalen Hurts in a while, certainly not a lot this season. I think Philadelphia, it's all about Saquon. Can Barkley get it done on the ground or catching the ball out of the backfield, which I also think is not talked about enough, his ability in his hands in the passing game. I think Barkley, for me, if I'm backing Philadelphia, I'm backing Barkley as my MVP, not Jalen Hurts. But Mahomes is Mahomes. There's no way you can bet against him if Kansas City wins this game.
Yeah. I mean, listen, Patrick Mahomes only threw for 182 yards, albeit 3 touchdowns. The first time the Eagles and the Chiefs met in a Super Bowl just 2 years ago, he still walked away with the MVP award. There wasn't even really a different conversation. Last year, same story. The first time the Chiefs won a Super Bowl, Damian Williams had over 100 scrimmage yards and 2 total touchdowns. Of course, it was Patrick Mahomes. It is not just a quantifiable thing from a statistical perspective who gets listed as the MVP winner. There is that narrative built in. So let's take it one step further on the running back for the Birds. That would be Saquon Barkley. There has been an argument made, a discussion had on this show, that is Saquon Barkley possibly the best free agent acquisition we have seen in the NFL in the last decade or 15 years? You'd be hard-pressed to find many better if the answer is not yes. Is Saquon Barkley reinvigorating the running back position? Have we seen a resurgence at a position we thought was going to become extinct just a few years ago in the NFL? Again, I think you'd be hard-pressed to say no to that question. So from a narrative perspective, if the Eagles are triumphant, and Saquon Barkley is a big reason why, Joe, if Saquon Barkley doesn't win Super Bowl 59's MVP award, could a running back ever win an MVP award in a Super Bowl?
I'm with you, man. I think it's directly correlated for Philadelphia to win this game. Now, is there a shot that Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith or, quite honestly, I think Dallas Goedert is an interesting look, too, as well. But could it be? Could it be that that's the game plan? Sure, but I don't think so. I don't think this Philadelphia team wins this game unless they win it like they have won a lot of these games this year, right? On the back of the running game in Saquon Barkley. Yep. That's how they win. I don't see a other path that is more likely than that.
Yeah, and I think that's so well said, Joe, because you're going to see a lot bigger numbers after that top 3. In fact, you have to add on $14.5 to even get to Travis Kelce at an 18-1 price, and various other distinctions as you go even through the top 10. So maybe somebody said, well, you guys were just talking about how you trust the defenses more. How about Chris Jones for Kansas City at 65-1? The recipe for Kansas City to win a 3rd consecutive Super Bowl with the history that would set in the National Football League, and Chris Jones to win Super Bowl MVP would be a 10-3 victory for the Chiefs, and Chris Jones was the only touchdown of the game, strip-sacking Jalen Hurts early in the opening half. That is the path to Chris Jones becoming the Super Bowl MVP winner. Well, how about Kareem Hunt, 100 yards and 2 touchdowns? Sure, but is Kansas City likely to win said game script in a Super Bowl? All right, Travis Kelce, 125 yards and 2 touchdowns. Who threw him those 125 yards in both scores? That's why it's hard to find those distinctions despite what looks like some juicy plus money prices.
Yeah, and it looks really, really fun. Like, why not? It's worth a flyer. Yeah. But the opportunities for that to fall into those categories, There's not a lot of options for it here, Ben. If we're playing the numbers game, we want people who we know are going to be involved in scoring and winning. And listen, Chris Jones could dominate this game, and then we're talking a blowout. He gets 4 or 5 sacks. Sure, great. The chances of that happening are much better. I think that, it turns out that Saquon Barkley scores 2 touchdowns and wins it than Chris Jones getting 3 or 4 sacks.
And listen, we have seen non-quarterbacks win this award frequently.
Yeah.
Cooper Kupp, who is now on his way out of Los Angeles, it appears, when the Rams won Super Bowl 56. Who was that MVP winner? It wasn't Matthew Stafford. It was Cooper Kupp. But that was a historical season. So if it's a non-quarterback, then you would think Saquon Barkley with a record-setting historical season. More on the Super Bowl next.
But don't tell anybody. I'm sick of coming here every year and talking about the Kansas City Chiefs.
Look, remember a few years ago we were here, people saying, Andy Reid's going to retire. I'm like, no way. When you're riding Seabiscuit, Secretariat, when you're riding a horse that you know can win, who would jump off that?
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
You want me to solve all this tush-push and fourth down malarkey that goes on with the officials? Here's a crazy idea. Get rid of the worst rule in the NFL, and that is forward progress. How about this? Where I knock your ass in the ground is where the ball goes, period. Let's end this whole conversation. Like, if I drop you back 4 yards, then you lost 4 yards. If we get rid of forward progress, this tush-push and everything else is taken care of. Where I put your tail on the ground is where the ball goes. End of conversation. It's the dumbest rule and the most arbitrary rule. The only thing that is a worse call in the NFL than forward progress is the punt that goes out of bounds when you watch the official walk down the sideline having absolutely no clue where that ball crossed over. All I can think of is that Price is Right game go do-de-do-de-do, do-de-do-de-do, as he's walking down the sideline, arbitrarily trying to figure out where the ball crossed over because he's got no clue.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
So not just the Super Bowl MVP odds for Super Bowl 59 in 5 days, but a couple of MVP specials markets that are basically match bets in a few varieties. Either quarterback to win the award at minus 185. Don't love that number, Joe, because if you want to bet on that to be the case, and the most likely, just bet Patrick Mahomes at plus 110 if you believe the Chiefs are the right side. Again, I think if the Eagles win this game in the way that Philadelphia has won most football games this year, Saquon Barkley, based on the narrative, the storyline, what he has meant to this franchise in his first year in Philadelphia, what he has meant to the entirety of his position in the National Football League, he is winning that award. Field versus Mahomes at minus 150. Now that might be a little bit more enticing.
I'm staring at that Barkley first TD plus MVP. Boy, oh boy, that's a pretty interesting one. Simply because if I'm going to bet Barkley to be the MVP at what, plus 250, 60, whatever that number was, the chance of him scoring the first touchdown, probably that's right in the realm at a good price at 9-1. But yeah, it feels like the field versus Mahomes. Anybody except versus Mahomes, I think, is not a bad look at minus 150 because it correlates to just about everything else there, Ben, that we talked about, the possible outcomes. And you're kind of screwed one way or the other if Kansas City wins because Mahomes is winning the MVP. So if you're leaning towards Philly in any way, shape, or form, those are the kinds of specials you want to look at.
Yeah, I would say. And then again, you could just say, let me bet the Birds at plus 102 on the money line to win a Lombardi trophy. You're not getting great value in that moment.
No.
Saquon first touchdown, plus 400 is the number by itself. Add on the MVP, plus 280. You get a 9-1 price. That would be enticing, right? If Saquon Barkley starts the game with a touchdown in New Orleans, boom, rockets up the board as that first and foremost front and center individual who made a big play to kick off the game in the Big Easy, as he has often done. Any defensive player. Now, this would not be something I would bet to, say, win a Heisman Trophy or the NFL MVP or any of that. But, Joe, we have seen 9 times, and we've only played 58 previous Super Bowls, so it's not like that irregular. It's around 10%. 9 times overall, we have seen a defensive player win Super Bowl MVP. Most recently, Super Bowl 50, that was Von Miller. And we have talked about how great both of these defenses are, and I made the point on Chris Jones, the Chiefs win a Super Bowl 10-3. But, Joe, there is a chance if this game is 14-13 and well under, and somebody is making a defensive play, forcing a turnover, scoring a touchdown, we could see a defensive player win that MVP award 15-1 to take all thought process out of it and just trust either defense. Not the craziest thing we've ever seen in sports.
No, it's not. But I think if that's the direction you're going to go, you've got to look at the guys that have the right matchups, right? I think Cooper DeJean is an interesting choice because he's going to be lined up in that slot, and he is going to be responsible for Travis Kelce in the middle of that field. They play a lot of nickel, the Philadelphia Eagles, and Cooper DeJean is a ball hawk, and he's a guy, Ben, that we've seen all throughout college, and we've seen this year. He's got a nose for the ball. It ends up showing up. So is he a guy that might very well impact the game defensively? I think so. That might not be a bad look with him. And then on the flip side, who's going to be the guy responsible for shutting down A.J. Brown? And whoever that is in the secondary of them is going to have an opportunity, I think, to affect this game. I don't think there's going to be a ton of sacks because of the way they get rid of the ball so quick, both teams. So I don't know that rushers could be in the conversation, but I definitely think the INTs are up for grabs.
Cooper DeJean turns 22 years old on Sunday. His birthday, Saquon Barkley's birthday. Maybe those are your MVP winners. 200-1 for Cooper DeJean, the rookie out of Iowa, to be that Super Bowl 59 MVP winner. On a losing team, 45-1 has happened just once in Super Bowl history. Way back in Super Bowl 5, Chuck Howley of the Dallas Cowboys taking home the honors. Don't think that happens this time around. Let's talk about action in the association. That's next. no idea how to categorize what Mavericks GM Nico Harrison pulled off, Joe. All I know is that he shipped off Luka Doncic without telling Luka about it.
If you thought conditioning was a problem for Luka, wait till you get a load of Anthony Davis tripping over air and then missing 40 games because he's like Glass Joe.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
You know, they have a lot of hopes, and they thought last year they were turning the corner. Even early this year, they start turning the corner, and then you lose 13 games in a row.
Edmonton chipped away, got a late goal, won the game 4-3. I felt like they dominated the third period. They moved the puck on that power play. It was an exceptional hockey game. It went over the total.
Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Live right here on the Early Line on SportsGrid. Let's get you ready for a great day of basketball on this Tuesday evening. We'll talk the NBA in just a matter of moments. But, Joe, let's start with a huge game tonight in college basketball between two teams contending for a Big East regular season crown. St. John's hoping for its first since 1991-92, the final year of Louis. Luke Carnesecca's final year as the head coach of the Red Storm. Maybe the biggest game we have seen for St. John's inside Madison Square Garden in the last 2 decades, 3 decades. They're a 2.5-point favorite tonight at home against Marquette. 146.5 is that total. Short spread, total of 146 and a hook. How do you see this game playing out between the Johnnies and the Golden Eagles?
Well, it's so interesting, Ben, because, I was talking last night about how unbelievably horrific the ACC in basketball has become. And there are some people that have been saying, the Big East, just ain't what it used to be. Well, just take a look. Marquette just had to play UConn, right? Now they're getting, they lost. So now they got to take on St. John's. You know who they have after that? Creighton. Then you've got the same situation. When you go over the next couple of weeks here, UConn has got to face St. John's coming up, then Creighton as well. So all of these teams, these 4 big teams in the Big East, over the next week, Ben, are all going to be playing one another. And it starts here tonight. The question is, Marquette's got to be careful because already coming into this one with a loss to UConn on Saturday, what happens if they lose this game here? Then all of a sudden they got another impossible game coming up. Yeah, call me crazy. This is a monster game for the Big East, but it also, to me, all depends, and you talked about it with the coach earlier on the total here. Is St. John's really, Ben, going to continue to shoot 24% from the perimeter on the season? Is there going to be some positive regression at some point? Because that's what they're shooting, 24% from long range. If that changes here tonight, I promise you, not only will this game go flying over, but St. John's wins it rather easily.
A 2.5-point spread in favor of the Red Storm, who has won 8 consecutive games, off to a 10-1 start in Big East play, covering 5 times in those last 8 games, under in 4 of their previous 5. As you look at efficiency metrics from Kenneth Pomeroy on the offensive side of the football, or offensive side for St. John's, we talked a lot of Super Bowl today, my apologies. The Red Storm, 70th. Not all that elite. Defensively, 4th most efficient in college hoops. How do they try to contain Marquette tonight? Led by one of the best guards you will see in the country in Cam Jones. But can Kadari Richmond answer on the other side? And R.J. Lewis for Rick Pitino as well. You know it's going to be a great scene and an atmosphere. I cannot wait to watch that game tonight. 146 and a hook.
Yep.
I think that total is very, very intriguing. The fact that it's even up there, Joe, might be telling you something if you watch St. John's play Providence at the Garden early on Saturday. All right, let's go to the NBA. A bunch of really good games on this Tuesday night as well. By my count, I believe 7. Let me double check. Yes, 7 on this Tuesday night, including a showdown in the Eastern Conference in the land. The Cavaliers, 2-point home favorite against the Celtics. Total now at 238. More than likely, Joe, unless something drastic happens in the postseason, it will give some love to the Knicks. But unless something drastic happens in the postseason, where we stand right now and the quality of basketball we are seeing from Boston and Cleveland, this should be our Eastern Conference Finals matchup. So what can we expect in an early season preview of it?
Well, I think home court matters here, Ben. And I think the Cavs, who are coming into this game rolling now, right? 4 straight games they've won now by 19 or more points. They are rolling. Yeah. They are healthy. They're a little bit deeper now, right now, than the Celtics. And they're 24-3 at home, 25-4 when they have equal rest to their opponent, which is what they've got here. And the problem with the Celtics is they've kind of taken a little step back defensively, especially on the road. Ben, we've seen them struggle now against the Lakers, against the Sixers, New Orleans. They're just 4-8 against the number in their last 12 games away from TD Garden. At this price, it would only be a money line play on the Cavs, and I would not be shocked if this game goes flying over that 237 total.
A 2-point spread, but only minus 126 money line number for the Cavaliers at this moment. And yes, 238 is that number. These two teams so far have split their season series. A Boston win in Boston, a Cleveland win in the land. Where is this game? In Cleveland. The Celtics have only been an underdog twice this year against the two teams that have better records than the Celtics. The only two teams in the NBA that can say that. The Cavs, 40-9. Oklahoma City, now 39 wins after dismantling the shorthanded Milwaukee Bucks last night. And in those two games, the Celtics, a 2-point underdog or fewer. They lost both outright, and they never have covered. 0-2 against the spread as a dog this year. The Cavs have actually covered in both of the games against the C's this season. Joe, like you, I think it's rather simple. I'll lay the 2 or now just minus 126 on the money line for this Cavaliers team. I don't think it's a blowout. I think it's a great game, and I think it could be a very fun preview of what we will hope to see come May in the Eastern Conference postseason. But again, I think that line, rather indicative. Cavaliers as a favorite this year, 30-15 against the spread. Now let's go to a rivalry renewed in Los Angeles, but a different rivalry at this moment. The Clippers, 8.5-point favorite at home against the LA Lakers, who are waiting now for Luka Doncic, that's fun to say, to get back from his calf injury in play. Luka has not played since Christmas Day. 220 in a hook is that total. Is there anything in your estimation, Joe, the Lakers can do to keep this game competitive tonight at the Intuit Dome?
Oh, sure. I mean, listen, anything is possible here. It is the NBA after all. So I don't know that I'd be running to lay the 7.5, but I'd certainly be willing to lay it to back Norm Powell to go over his 21.5-point prop here. Yeah. He's averaging 24, 25 for the season here. And that's even with Kawhi Leonard back in the fold here. He has been their go-to scoring guy. He's had at least 22 points in each of his last 8 games. And by the way, the last time he played the Lakers, he did drop 22, and that was with Kawhi Leonard in the lineup. Lakers, no more Max Christie or Anthony Davis, their two best defenders. They are going to be struggling, to say the least. And I think the tempo happens. I think Norm Powell is supposed to have a big game. I'm looking at his point prop up and over.
Death taxes Norm Powell making at least 3 threes. It's minus 135. We'll go elsewhere around the NBA quickly here. The Knicks on the second leg of a back-to-back. Huge rally for a home victory last night against the Rockets. They head up to Toronto. They're a 4.5-point road favorite. Houston stays on the road. They head to the other borough to go to Brooklyn to take on the Nets. They're a 9-point road favorite. Philly at home, laying 2 points against the Dallas Mavericks. The Bulls, a 3-point home dog against Miami. Could be an interesting trade week for both of those franchises. And the Trailblazers, Joe, 4 consecutive wins outright as an underdog. Home tonight, catching 5 from the Pacers. Any other plays in the NBA?
Yeah, give me Toronto all day long here at home, taking on the New York Knicks. It would have been good if Anunoby could have actually played in this game, but he won't. And Jalen Brunson, Cat, Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges all had to play nearly 40 minutes in that comeback last night. Give me Toronto.
27-16-1 against the spread. The Raptors this year as a dog. Joe, we'll talk tomorrow. Jon Rothstein up next. Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
How about this? For the first time on the Early Line this year, we don't say this is only November. This is only December. This is January. This is February, the month before a certain month known as March, with Jon Rothstein right here on this Tuesday morning on the Early Line on SportsGrid. Joining us on behalf of the FanDuel Sportsbook and, of course, doing great work for CBS Sports. John, this is February, and we're very glad to have you here.
Ben, it's great to be with you.
And to start off the opening week of February, a huge Big 12 battle between two teams that desperately needed a win last night at the Phog in Lawrence. Top 20 showdown between 8th-ranked Iowa State and number 16 Kansas. John, both of these teams needed a win. The Jayhawks got it in resounding fashion, winning by 17 and covering as a 2.5 12-point favorite, 69-52 over the Cyclones, handing the Clones their third consecutive loss. Who showed you more last night inside Allen Fieldhouse?
Well, I expected Kansas to respond in a major way after the second half that it played on Saturday against Baylor. And think about this for a second, Ben. In Saturday's second half loss to Baylor, Kansas gave up 60 points. Meanwhile, Monday night against Iowa State, Kansas gave up 52 points. So the Jayhawks, obviously, between Saturday and Monday, made a different commitment defensively, giving up 60 points in the second half against the Bears on Saturday, only 52 in the game. But you also saw something defensively last night from Kansas with Flory Badunga and Hunter Dickinson on the floor at the same time. The interior defense of Kansas went to a different level.
A couple of heartbreaking losses for KU in the last few weeks within Big 12 play. Big defensive stand last night. John, they had gone over in 3 straight, entering the matchup against Iowa State, allowing at least 81 points in all 3. A much better performance last night against the Cyclones. Now from the Big 12 to the Big East. Oh boy, what a game we have tonight inside the world's most famous arena. It is 12th ranked St. John's atop the Big East standings at this moment, 10-1 in conference play against the 9-2 Big East team in Marquette, ranked 11th in the country. John, we'll get to the X's and O's. We'll get to the key matchups in just a moment. There you see the numbers on this screen. But for context and atmosphere, tonight inside Madison Square Garden, this is St. John's biggest game inside MSG since when, in your estimation?
You know, in terms of this game, Ben, I think, you can obviously make a lot of different cases for a lot of different games given the circumstances. But in terms of the totality of this week, playing Marquette tonight at Madison Square Garden, playing UConn Friday at Gamble Pavilion, this is as big a week as the St. John's program has had in a long time, maybe a quarter of a century. Remember, St. John's has not won a game in the NCAA tournament since 2000. And St. John's, if it can win a pair of games this week, would put itself in the pole position to win at least a share of the Big East regular season title for the first time since the 91-92 season. That's the last year that Lou Carnesecca roamed the sidelines for this program. But, Ben, things like that make for great conversation for people from the periphery, and I understand that. But if you really want to get into the nuts and bolts of things, this is a pretty significant week for St. John's from an NCAA tournament seeding standpoint. I know that the Red Storms have been highly ranked the last couple of weeks, but the facts are the facts. Right now, as of today, St. John's just has one quad one win this season. So in order to have a seed that reflects the type of season that St. John's is having, it needs to start stacking wins against top flight competition. St. John's will still have 2 games against Marquette, 2 games against UConn, a home game against Creighton, and also a road game at Villanova that as of today still falls within the top 75 of the net, which makes it a quad one game.
A big week begets big opportunity. Tonight in the Garden against Marquette, Friday on the road against UConn. So let's dive into the nuts and bolts, John, of this individual matchup. You'll be watching tonight inside MSG. What is the key matchup between St. John's and Marquette?
Well, I think the one thing that we have seen with Marquette is that when Marquette's ancillary pieces play at a really, really high level, guys like Chase Ross and Ben Gold, Marquette goes to a completely different level. So taking away those guys are going to be paramount for St. John's to come away with a win. And St. John's here at some point is going to have to become a more capable outside shooting team. The grit, the determination, all the attributes that make up vintage Rick Pitino teams are great, and it's willed this team to 19 wins in its first 22 games. But to go far in the NCAA tournament, to go to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament, sooner or later you have to knock down some shots. Kadari Richmond, who is starting to separate himself again as one of the best players in the Big East, again, made 2 3-point shots on Saturday against Providence. You can't rely on him to be a consistent outside shooter as of yet, but you can start to have the conversation that Kadari Richmond is starting to look again like Kadari Richmond. An elite performance on Saturday against Providence, and in his last 5 games is averaging about 16 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. He's like a Swiss Army knife.
The Johnnies, as you see there, a minus money favorite, minus 115 to win their first Big East regular season crown in over 3 decades. Big 12, Big East, Big 10. Tonight in Los Angeles at Pauley Pavilion. UCLA hosts number 9 Michigan State. The Spartans suffering their first Big Ten loss, John, over the weekend against USC. UCLA, meanwhile, inspired basketball. They've won 5 in a row. Final minute of this segment. How competitive is tonight's clash in Westwood?
Extremely competitive, and it's an opportunity for UCLA to regain its place among the national discussion. I'm talking about being back in the top 20 of the polls. You know, UCLA had a 4-game losing streak at the start of January, but has rallied, you know, over the past couple of weeks for a number of different reasons. The first is obvious. Adai Mara has made a major difference for the Bruins. It's almost like UCLA had a midseason trade and acquired a 7'3" 5-man. And then the X factor for this team continues to be sophomore point guard Dylan Andrews, and he just needs to continue to understand that being good is not the enemy of being an all-conference player. As long as he gets 10 to 12 points and 4 or 5 assists and minimizes his turnovers, UCLA can beat anybody in the Big Ten.
A Tuesday night in February. It is one of the beautiful things about college basketball right now. Jon Rothstein, we thank you as always. We're on the early line. Up next. Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Let's go around the country for a Tuesday night in February in college basketball. It is a beautiful sight each and every week. Less than 6 weeks remaining until Selection Sunday. We highlighted action yesterday in the Big 12, the monumental showdown in the Big East tonight between St. John's and Marquette inside Madison Square Garden. Michigan State stays out west after losing to SC over the weekend. Can they bounce back against UCLA? The Bruins have won 5 straight. The Spartans had won their first 9 games in Big Ten action, still sitting in pole position atop the Big Ten standings. Let's talk a little bit more Big Ten basketball. Iowa, very tough blow yesterday for their talented sophomore big in Owen Freeman. Finger surgery, out for the remainder of this season. And yet, the line for the Hawkeyes, who have been stumbling as of late, actually working more in their manner. 7.5-point spread on the screen. 6.5-point number against Purdue. Number 7, Purdue, in the top 10 for a second consecutive week. They've been a top 10 team a ton. In fact, in the 72 total AP polls since the start of the 2021-22 men's college basketball season, the Boilers have been a top 10 team for 59 of those 72 polls. Consistent success at the highest level. Big rivalry victory on Friday night against Indiana. How about IU, who is really struggling right now? Can they find some resolve at a tough place to win inside the Kohl Center against number 21 Wisconsin? The Badgers, a 9.5-point favorite. When you talk top 25 tilts, of course, you must go to the SEC with so many teams in the top 25. Ole Miss, 4.5-point home favorite tonight in Oxford against Kentucky. Interesting week for the Wildcats a week ago. Road win as a double-digit dog outright against Tennessee. Home loss in the return to Coach Calipari. That would be Coach Cal. John Calipari to Rupp Arena as an 9.5-point home favorite in Lexington on Saturday. A lot of bounce-back, resilient spots potentially at stake tonight. Oklahoma blew out Vanderbilt over the weekend. They're getting 16.5 tonight on the Plains against the number 1 team in the country in Auburn. Houston, 22.5-point favorite. Suffered their first Big 12 loss over the weekend against Texas Tech. Now expected to show out in a big way tonight in H-Town, laying 22.5 against Oklahoma State. Florida lost by 20 in Knoxville to the Vols. Vandy got beat bad. Both teams coming off a loss. How does it look tonight in Gainesville? Again, so many great games. A couple of very compelling ones in the Big 12. Baylor's been a very up-and-down team this year for Scott Drew. Jon Rothstein talked about the resilient second half, doubling up Kansas to come back from a 21-point opening half deficit to literally double up KU, winning the second 20 minutes, 60-30 at home in Waco on Saturday. But they were a 2.5-point home favorite at close. They were expected to win that football game. Much more chaotic, I think, than any odds maker would have anticipated. Now they're on the road tonight against 13th-ranked Texas Tech. If you haven't been paying attention to what Grant McCaslin has done in Lubbock over the last 2 years, but especially this season with the Red Raiders, you should start looking. Texas Tech now number 13 in the country. Won in overtime in Houston on Saturday against the Cougs to hand UH their first loss of the season in Big 12 play without their head coach Grant McCaslin on the sideline for a good majority of it because he was ejected early, and rightfully so, as his star player and leading scorer JT Toppin somehow was awarded a flagrant 2 for a kick to the nether regions, if you will, of a Houston defender trying to get out of a double team and a trap. It did not seem malicious, and yet a flagrant 2 and an expulsion was granted. I like Texas Tech tonight in this big spot against Baylor. And here is a moment that we always pay attention to when you see the odds tell you something. BYU is now a 2.5-point home favorite tonight in Provo against 20th-ranked Arizona. The Cats back into the top 25 for the first time since November of this year. Yegor Dimon, if you don't know his name for BYU, the Russian star for the Cougars, playing really good basketball. And anytime you play in Provo, it is going to be difficult. And we have an unranked home favorite against a ranked team. More often than not, that trend is profitable. All right, that does it for a Tuesday on the early line. Wednesday, so much more Super Bowl coverage from New Orleans here on TEL. It starts at 8 a.m. Eastern time on the Grid.